In this video, we're going to cover visual hierarchy. If you're watching this video, chances are, and this is just a guess, you're wondering about the etymology of the word hierarchy. That's not what this video is about. This video is about design. A lot of times, designs look cluttered, even busy. Why? Because they are. But we can get a pretty good understanding about what's going on here visually, why the design is cluttered and busy. When you're adding element after element, all these pieces of the design, sometimes it feels to us like each thing we're adding is equally important. Why not add a red, glowing, spinning, rounded button to each link on our page? The problem with this kind of design, and this could be your favorite thing ever, but if we treat each element equally in terms of visual excitement, suddenly everything vies for our attention. And with everything screaming at us, it's easy to see why people might think this is cluttered or busy. When we're doing freelancing work, we know we want to put ourselves not in the shoes of the client, but we want to think about what our client's client is thinking and feeling. These are the people visiting the websites we're building. If you can't quickly find what you're looking for, what do? You leave the page. You shut down, unplug, open the window, grab your laptop, open it back up, turn it on, and write a letter.
Dear Emily, good afternoon. Normally, I wouldn't presume to leave design-based feedback on the work of a stranger. However, your website's visual complexity seared my retinas. Sincerely.
At that point, you can choose how you want to sign or maybe not sign your name. Instead, if you're looking to make something easy to digest and understand, it's a good idea to figure out which elements are the most important. And of course, it's a good idea to figure out what's least important too. And that's the key. The best way to create the right kind of visual cues, the ones that guide a user to the most important elements first, is to create a visual hierarchy, an order of importance or significance. And this can be different for every design. But how do we design around what we want people to focus on? Let's look at a few examples, and we'll start with Twitch. Twitch is a live streaming platform for gamers. It might seem like an odd example to start with, but there's something profound going on with this, and that's the following. Did they plaster a giant headline at the top here explaining in literal words what Twitch does? No, they jump right into the video. It's playing immediately. They gave visual prominence not to text or their logo, but the content they're featuring. The first thing you see is a giant video stream. You can start watching immediately. The next visual thing we focus on is the series of video thumbnails. They're not playing, and they're a bit smaller. The stillness and the size make these things less visually prominent. Plus, we usually start looking at or reading a web page from the top. So our primary focus is the big video at the top, which is playing. Size, motion, and placement. The designers who made this page thought that was the most important thing to feature. The secondary focus is that row of other live channels. The size is smaller, the motion is frozen, and it's placed lower on the page. That's the second thing in our visual hierarchy. What about the third, the categories? These are even smaller. They're decreasing the size yet again, less visually prominent, and they're placed farther down on the page. This is the third part of our hierarchy. The most important things are at the top of our hierarchy, and we give less prominence to other items that aren't as important. They're doing a great job because they're thinking of their audience. Think about that. They're not saying what Twitch is. They're just showing you, not telling you. Think about how much less effective this top section would be if it said, Twitch is an online platform that lets you watch people play games. That doesn't even sound interesting. Instead, they're showing you, but that's the point. That's what they're showing you. Their logo is small. It takes up less than 0.5% of the page. No giant bright button or call to action. That's a really solid approach. What about Apple? Here's a version of their Mac page. Front and center, the iMac. It's the most prominent thing because it's taking up the majority of the page. And it's featured right there at the top. Above that, we have our site navigation, then our Mac navigation. This is how we can learn more about different Mac-related products. The most prominent thing on the screen is the iMac. The very nature of scrolling down places each of the subsequent sections, the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro, their position makes them secondary on that visual hierarchy. But if we go even further down, there's a great example here of size creating a visual hierarchy. It's not just placement. Whereas the above sections get a full distance from left to right, each of these gets about half. They've also chosen to use different headings. The larger heading is the product name, and it's a great deal smaller than the largest headings in the full width sections. They've used placement on the page where everything appears and size to achieve an effective visual hierarchy. So the products they want featured most prominently are featured most prominently. We're going to come back to this Mac page later on in the course, but for now, let's go to our third example, Slack's enterprise page. This is a really solid example because the visual hierarchy they're creating is immediately visible on load. They have a prominent headline and a solid call to action. We instantly know what they're trying to communicate because they come out and say, efficient enterprises collaborate in Slack. They're communicating that trust and authority, and they're doing that in the most prominent way. Text that's significantly larger than the rest of the page. What about the second level in our hierarchy? They break it down into 3 features, 3 things Slack does for enterprise customers. Each of these gets a smaller boundary and a much smaller headline treatment. But it doesn't just stop there with the headings. Each of the paragraphs gets a slightly lighter font color and a smaller font. The relationship between the headings and the paragraphs themselves establishes that clear order of importance. The heading is the big picture. The paragraph expands upon and supports it. If there's one thing Slack wants you to know, it's that efficient enterprises collaborate in Slack. How do we know that? Because it's the most prominent thing on the page. They also want to communicate each of these features that support that statement. Even when you scroll down to additional sections, none of the headings are ever as prominent as the original heading at the top of the page. When we begin designing, sometimes it helps to create a rough sketch of all the content. What elements go where? We can identify the most important elements we want users to see first. First, we want them to see this. Then we want them to see this. Then we want them to see that. That's our hierarchy. So that's what we should do. We should plan to style these elements to follow our hierarchy. The first element, that can be the biggest or the brightest or the most obvious. The second one, it should be the second most obvious. The third, you get the idea. But that's visual hierarchy. When you're deliberate about which aspects of your design deserve the most user focus and in what order, is a terrible start to a sentence. Put a better way, if you try to make users look at everything, they're more likely to get overwhelmed or annoyed. Setting up a hierarchy that guides us through the things we want to emphasize, that gives people a chance to notice those details. And that can start the process towards achieving beautiful design.